This Friday is an important day for lovers of the news. It's the feast day of St. Francis de Sales, the patron saint of journalists. Mike Rizzo, director of the journalism program at St. John's University, is here with us now with more on how journalists everywhere can learn a lot from DeSales. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
So talk to me more about why St. Francis de Sales is so connected to journalism.
Well, I start off with my students to introduce them to St. Francis de Sales. And most of the time when I say St. Francis, they think of St. Francis of Assisi. It's not him.
Absolutely. You think the animals, right?
That's right. But St. Francis de Sales really was a great communicator. And that's what I impart to my students. He wrote a lot. He wanted to tell people a lot of information about what was going on. It was a difficult time for Catholics in some parts of Europe at the time that he lived and preached. And he wanted to communicate to all of those people the different things that they needed to know so they could make better informed decisions about being a part of the church and what to do in their everyday lives.
With everything going on in the world today, it's crucially important to be informed. What can journalists do better today, and how can they actually learn from St. Francis de Sales?
Well, first of all, again, he wrote a lot. So we as journalists want to be doing stories. If we're sitting back and doing nothing, then we're not doing the job that really we want to do. They have to be comprehensive. They have to provide full information, all different kinds of perspectives, different details. St. Francis talked about the joy and satisfaction of reporting the truth. They need to find the truth and report it. They need to do follow-ups. It can't just be a one and done, and we see so much of that today in the news. One story gets reported, you never hear about it again. What are the other details of the story that can be reported? They need to show patience and humility, and that's not really about writing per se, but about being a good journalist. Maybe don't rush to publish or don't rush to report until you have everything checked out. And certainly humility. The story's not about you. It's about the story and the people involved in the story. And that's what I also teach my students, and I also learn from St. Francis.
Why is he the patron saint of journalists? Talk to me more about his background.
So he was a bishop, a priest in Geneva, Switzerland. He studied in Italy, and he wrote a lot of letters. He worked his way to communicating to people through his letters. Some even call them pamphlets. In those letters, he really thought of the reader. He wrote to kings and to popes, to dukes, to nuns, to regular folks. He wrote books to ordinary people about the teachings of the church, how important they were, but he also told people about what was going on in his community, in his diocese. So he was telling them, like the town crier of old, here's what's the news in my community, and I want to let you know about it. So I think he's still relevant today, and that's why he's the patron saint of journalists, because he wanted to communicate to people.
Right, because depending on what you write, you can, if you take out some of the facts, you can change the narrative.
Correct.
And we hear that horrible term, fake news.
Yes.
But you're a journalist yourself. You've worked at some major news organizations, from ABC News to, of course, the Diocese, the tablet newspaper, but also Fios 1, News 12. How has St. Francis de Sales inspired you?
So I look at what he has done as inspiration to be better, to really want to find the truth of stories and to let people know about it, to do it in a way that they will understand, not to use phrases or words that people don't understand. There's a phrase called KISS, and some of it may not be the best way to describe it, but I like to use it, keep it so simple. That's how people best understand information and knowledge. And I try to do that in my writing, to describe things, to paint a picture for them of what's going on in the story that I'm reporting on, and to try to give it the full perspective of the different elements involved in the story.
What do you think St. Francis de Sales would say of news today and how it's being disseminated?
Well, again, he was a prolific writer, so he was almost kind of like, I think, enjoy being on a computer and maybe just sending out all these emails and stories that he could be doing. I think he'd want people to know about a lot of things. I think he'd want to be the communicator of those things. But I think he'd be concerned about some of the things that he was talking about in some of his letters. He was called the gentleman saint because he wanted to treat everyone with respect. And I think sometimes in journalism now we take a more adversarial role than we do take a respectful role of the professional work that we need to do for the public.
And of course, you should be always disseminating the truth.
That's correct. You know, he had a phrase, be who you are and be it well. And that, I think, to journalists means be a good journalist, an ethical journalist. Do the reporting properly, be truthful, report the facts, not your opinion. Really give people all the knowledge that they need in the story that you're reporting on.
Mike Rizzo, director of the journalism program at St. John's University, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thanks.
If you're watching Currents News on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and then click on the bell to get instant updates about all of our newest content, because we are putting your faith in the news.